So it appears nowadays a 9 to 5 job and the way of life that comes with it is dead. I saw a video just this morning on Twitter where some woman was talking about the fact that she's a recent graduate and after getting her first job she barely has any money to do anything, she can't have any free time to do anything, and it seems like a really awful life. In the comment section and some of the reposts of the same video were essentially criticising the woman, but not to quote a certain influencer. I was thinking, how in the matrix must these people be? Working a 9 to 5 job right now is not like working it in the past. Pay is less than it ever has been relative to productivity, people are generally speaking earning less, the cost of living is rising, and it is ultimately a path that is just not working out for most people anymore. So, with that being said, what's the problem and what can we do about this to save ourselves from this position? Because not to be really negative, and I don't want to be, it appears to be the case that the gap is widening. The assets including houses, the stock market itself, that the price of goods is going up every single year. But what's not going up is people's wages. So essentially the people that already own these assets at the top are getting richer at the expense of everybody else who can't afford to even enter these asset classes to begin with. So what is the solution and how do we solve this? Let's first talk about the problem though. The idea of getting up early, at 7, 6 o'clock even, and heading into work by 9, and then finishing the day at 5, coming home, getting back for maybe 6, 7, depending on how long the commute is. It's a lot of time, it's basically every waking hour that you have in the day. And a lot of the time that people spend in work isn't doing too much good. If we actually think about it, if we actually have to deep it, how much work do most people do? Most people aren't that productive in work, and studies have actually shown that for most people their working day could be cut down probably by half. But it's the fact that you have to work from 9 to 5 and you have this work to do, so generally speaking people want to do the minimum amount of work to get through. Now what this results in is of course low productivity, and that all boils down to the fact that people don't really feel the purpose anymore. If people felt a pride in their job, they may feel like it was worth it, but right now it just appears to be the case that the opposite is true. People even on decent incomes and decent jobs are struggling to get by. And again, when you tie that with the amount of effort that you have to put in, the amount of time as well, like you have to view it from the perspective of a young people if you're an older person watching, and if you're a young person like me, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like right now I'm doing a degree. The degree's in business, what would have once been considered a very good degree. And we're told about how business students on the courses can do anything because it's such a versatile degree. Now, I thought that the words business studies would have been about making money, we'd have learnt how to make a lot of money. All I found out is that this course is relative to how you become a manager, like a small-time manager, not a CEO, not a vice chair or a vice president, a manager. Your graduate schemes make between like 20 and 30,000, which is fine and that is a fair entry point, but as I show on this channel all the time when we talk about business, we can make more than that sat here. So we have to ask then, is it worth it? Like the degree that I'm doing, I'm genuinely considering dropping out from it. And that's not because it's hard or anything like that. It's because if I could have my time again, and again, I can, because it is always an option, I'd have gone and done something not that I thought would have made money, but something I'd have been passionate about. To bring the whole subject round to what I'm trying to originally mention, I think the reason why I did a business studies degree is the reason why most people go to university. For the hopes of having a successful career, a decent job, and being able to make a little something for ourselves and our families. But all I learned is that for most of the courses related to business, it's people who don't run businesses teaching the lectures and reading off of the board because they don't have any, actual information to input because they don't know about the subject. And when we think about how ridiculous this is, imagine any other product like this. Imagine going for a driving lesson and the driving instructor goes, "This is how the car works, you need to press the pedal," and it's like, "Can you not show me?" And then the driving instructor responds, "No, I don't know how to drive." It's that ridiculous. I know it sounds like I've gone a bit off topic here, but it does actually all round up to one point. The point is, it all seems to be a massive scam in a way. We go to school or college and then university for years and years and years. Again, 60 grand of debt here in the UK for a 3-year degree. In America, significantly more. What do you get when you come out of a 60 grand investment? You might get a 25,000 job if you're very lucky, but when rent of houses is probably like £600-700 a month, That's already half of your money gone. Then your other expenses, what do you have left? And how do you get out of this situation? That's what we're going to touch upon next, because it's all well and good talking about the problems, but that's not solving anything for anyone. Let's talk about how we can actually solve these issues for ourselves and try to get ourselves into the position that will help us in the future. I think the big thing that we need to realise is that everything that we have been taught is a lie. And that might sound like a huge and bold statement, but I believe it to be the case. As I just said a second ago, I am doing a business degree. I've not learned anything about the practical world of business. Everything that I know about the businesses that I talk about on this channel, I've learnt myself. Just the other day I was talking to somebody who has a graduate scheme and a business degree, and it's basically what I said earlier, managing a small-time business for somebody else. The college system is not there to facilitate us getting good jobs, because the idea of a good job is something that just doesn't work anymore, because the pay is not good enough. You can have a great position in terms of authority, but if you're not getting paid accordingly, is there any point holding that much responsibility? I don't think that there is. And this is a realization that most people are coming to right now, but when that's the case, most people just stop there. Most people say, yes, a job is essentially a scam to get productivity out of us, and extort us for as many resources as possible, because you work, then you can't afford a house and a mortgage or to pay the house outright, so then you have to rent, which gives more people in the higher classes more of your assets, and then it's like, what do you have left? You have to finance your car, that's more interest for the banks, you end up with nothing. So how do you solve this? Well, it's about taking the next step of, once you realise that everything is essentially a scam or not the way it was intended to be or should be, how do we get past that? We need to look into a new way of doing things, and this is so easy, but people don't even want to open their mind to it because they talk about the risk. But the risk is real, and the risk is not necessarily in trying to make the change. The risk is in not trying to make the change. Like I said earlier, we are getting priced out of most asset classes more and more. Look in the past 25 years how stocks have risen. Look how housing prices in almost every country in the world have risen. Look at how wages have declined. There's a point where the people who own these assets are being enriched by owning them, and the people that don't are not going to be able to. And whilst that's the case, there's more demand for all of these assets, and essentially what that means is that the asset prices go up even more. So for those who have, it's great. For those who don't, it's not. As I always say on this channel, I think the big problem that everybody likes to make or tries to make is the association between time and money, and that's what stops people's earnings potential, because the first step of getting out of this mess is increasing your earnings. This is obvious common sense, but if you can't afford stuff, people always say cut back on costs. That's not going to work. Like, just think about it. Even if we get paid £1 million a year, which is obviously going to be a great change, but most people don't. Even if we were though, take the tax out of that and we might be left with 500,000. So that 500,000, even if we could save every single penny of it, we only have 500,000, and that's a massive overestimation. For most people, it's more like if they were able to save their 20,000, 30,000, they'd only be left with 30,000. They probably can't even afford to buy the car outright, and they certainly cannot afford to buy the house outright. And by the way, with 30,000 to afford the average house in the UK, you'd have to work like 10 years and not spend a penny and not have any tax on that 30,000, just for an example. I think that's about the statistics, but you get the point that I'm saying. We need to find a way to earn more. Side hustles are a great avenue, but we need to think about our side hustle in a different way. Our side hustle should not be our side hustle. Our job should be our side hustle. It can take up the majority of our time, but it's a side mission, because it's essentially enriching somebody else whilst enslaving us. What do we get from our 9 to 5? Do we get a sense of fulfillment? Probably not for most people. Do we get financial enrichment? Probably not for most people. So our 9 to 5 should therefore not be our main focus. We can still go to it, but I was talking to a friend who works in an office the other day, and he was telling me about how he's allowed to watch movies whilst they're not doing the work. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, why are you not watching YouTube videos or films to educate yourselves on how to make even more money? Or doing some other stuff, if you're allowed to, on your phone or on your laptop or on your computer. You could be, looking into starting an eBay shop like what I've done, or an Etsy shop, or selling something else. You could be looking into starting a course on something that you know about. You could be learning how to trade in the stock market or get into some sort of a bigger investment. Or you could be thinking about a business strategy and plan to turn some sort of an interest of yours into a money-making career. Wasting time is often the biggest problem. People like to say that I work so long and I don't have time to do this sort of stuff. If you have access to your phone at work, there's a lot of stuff that you can do just with that. And considering that most people don't take their work life too seriously, we can change the way that we work up completely to give ourselves more time for ourselves. The big problem that people often say when I say, why don't you try starting a business like I do and you won't have to work a 9 to 5 job? I always hear the same answer, and it always is usually either it's risky or there's no time for it. Now, the risk element I think we've addressed at this point. Essentially, what's the bigger risk? Not trying and having to work every day for the next 50, 60 years, or trying and failing and losing maybe $1,000 or a month of your time. Which one's a bigger risk? If we're honest and we say, right, when I come home from work, what do I do with my time? What is it? Well, it's like I cook. Obviously, you have to cook. There's probably I play some game or I watch TV for a couple of hours or that kind of stuff. What if we restructured our day completely? So let's say we wake up at 7 for work. What if we start waking up at 5, 4, giving ourselves the most sharp time of our mind? We have the next 2, 3, 4 hours now to work with our best mindset because we're not tired, we're ready as we're going to be at any point in the day. Why don't we take that time and then start working on our business in those hours? I know I talk about the businesses I do in this channel all the time, but let's just say a few of them. For example, the eBay shop that I run and have run in the past. I used to run a different eBay shop, long story, but the other eBay shop that I ran made 10,000 in revenue a month. 10,000 a month in revenue and maybe 3 to 4,000 in profits. Running a business like that took me 3 hours a day maybe on a bad day. That's all it takes. You can have those hours early on. Then you build up that business, like I say, to a point where you're making maybe 1,000, then 5, then 10, and obviously from there you probably don't have to work anymore. Or you could start scaling up and then getting to the point where your income is not the 2,000 that you got from your job originally. I would not quit when I have matched my job income. I would quit when I succeeded my job income from 2 at least streams, because I think that's a big important thing to note. As I experienced earlier this year, when your eBay shop goes down or something like that, you can be left with a big problem. So if you have 2 streams of income that are both substantial, that's not an issue, that's no worries at all, and you're good to carry on expanding the empire. But just by making that small structural change of the day, we completely alter the work-life cycle. Yes, we might have to come home and sleep, and we might be a lot more tired all the way through work, but obviously our sleep schedule will switch up, to match the hours. We'll have to make it work in some way. It was just an example, the numbers that I gave, but that's how we need to do it if we can't find any other way. If we really are genuinely far too tired when we come home, we need to want it. But I think it's also about making a sorry and sad realization, and that realization is what worked for our parents and more likely even our grandparents. Those days are gone. Like the days where in the 1980s someone's dad could have had 1 job and had 2 cars and gone on 3 holidays a year and owned a house or even 2 and rented 1 out, and that's not the case anymore. I'm sure just the other day an older member of my family was talking about a house for sale that cost, I think it was £25,000, maybe in like 1984. The same house now is worth like £260,000. The wages haven't gone up by 10x. The assets have. The way that we do things has to be different. For every winner, there is a loser, and for every loser, there is a winner. And when we talk about the finance, it is sadly a binary game. Are you winning? Are you losing? It's all about the numbers. It really is. So how do we change that? It's about working in a way that works for the richest, the most powerful, the most successful. Think about Jeff Bezos, for example. How much money he makes with Amazon a day. More than most people make in a year. Probably more than most people make in a decade. But does he work harder than most people work in a decade? No. It's because he's built a system where he barely even has to work and can get somebody to run it all. And we can talk about business automation, all that kind of stuff. That's a very separate note. The point is, that's what it is. You need to separate the relationship between time and money. It's very different for most people, and it needs to be that way to continue to have more success. I know that a lot of my peers in my age group, and that's arguably one of the reasons why I'm making this video, especially based on what I saw this morning, feel like there's no hope left for people like us anymore in this generation. I don't think that's the case though. Maybe I'm naive, or maybe I've just been lucky with it all, but from what I've seen, there's plenty of opportunities, and we can have it easier than most, because if we're honest, we have access to stuff that nobody in history has ever had. We can trade basically any stock from our mobile phone. We can learn about stuff on YouTube to help increase our income. We can start businesses that just didn't exist in the 1950s or 60s. I'm not saying that we have it easy, I'm just saying we have it different. And those of us who are realizing that quickly are doing better for it, are having more success than even the average person had back in the day. But it's just about doing things in the new way, changing our mindset, realizing that everything that we've been taught is from an era long gone, and now it's essentially just a lie, and altering our way of doing things to match that. So for those younger than, job age or school age or university age, there's still time. I'd recommend researching into this stuff, but especially if you're like me at university and whatever, I've shown it on this channel and I'm going to keep showing it. All of the businesses that you can start, and you can have tremendous success within a year, within 2 years, within 3 years, and build something which wouldn't have even been possible if you'd have never tried. Like, some of the businesses that I've started make more than a 9 to 5 whilst working maybe half as hard, a quarter as hard. It's just about doing stuff differently. And I guess that's the point for this video. So all hope is not lost. Cheer up out there, guys. Just understand that the dynamics have changed. It was different in the past, but those who can adopt a change, good or bad, can experience the best of both sides. And that's what it's all about. So thank you. I hope to see you again in the next one. And again, see you in that. Goodbye.